is it responsible to be sending citizens in Iran to their deaths? Do you bear some responsibility?
As I said, this is a war, and war has casualties.
And Reza, are you communicating directly with President Trump or members of the Trump administration?
Yes, we are.
Reza Pahlavi, the son of the Shah that was ousted in Iran during the Islamic Revolution, quite honestly, Jake, sounds a lot like an Israeli. You know, people die during war. What can we do? What can we do? No biggie. Yeah. Now, he's angling to serve as a puppet leader on behalf of Israel and the United States, but what do the people of Iran want, which is the most important thing here? Do they want him to be their leader, or do they want an actual democracy as opposed to, Western powers installing a puppet leader to do their bidding? I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, so this is a really important story, guys. So there's two different issues here. One is what should the people of Iran do? The other is whether we should attack Iran. And that one is driven largely by Israel. And what you're gonna see in this story is amazing. Again, the Israeli press telling us what's actually happening. So a lot of the Iranians that you're seeing all over social media are not Iranians at all. They're Israelis with a completely different agenda than the Iranians on the street. So don't miss this story and all the facts Anna's about to give you. And then we'll analyze, yes, but what should we do here in America?
Now, I had asserted that Pahlavi does not have popular support among the Iranians. And by the way, it appears that President Donald Trump has also asserted a similar claim. And of course, Israelis pretending to be Iranians lost their minds about that. But back in October, Haaretz had mentioned this. While Pahlavi enjoys some popularity among the Iranian expat community, meaning Iranians outside of Iran, it's far from clear that Iranians want him as a leader. And even the New York Times had to admit as much, writing that under the monarchy, the Iranian security services routinely arrested and tortured dissidents, a legacy that Pahlavi has either declined to address or sought to play down. In fact, he even dodged questions about his father's repressive reign and rule and the brutal secret police during an interview with the New York Times back in 2009. Now, what I'm specifically talking about was the internal security forces known as Savak. Okay, so the regime deployed this secret service and they did rain terror on the people of Iran. The whole point was to monitor and eliminate political opposition. And according to the American Enterprise Institute, which is in no way some lefty organization, Savak had significant involvement with the CIA. CIA, of course, provided the funding and training for Savak. And they also went on and tortured political dissidents. I should also note that Savak had unlimited power. But Reza Pahlavi is attempting to launder his father's reign and the violence that was carried out under his repressive rule. So when it comes to the current attempt to overthrow the Iranian regime, Reza Pahlavi told Haaretz, many successful campaigns have been based on nonviolent civil resistance as a method for delivering change. In other words, without outside interference. But as you can imagine, that's not what he said during his interview with CBS. Let's take a quick look at that.
But as you are urging people to protest and go to the streets, the death toll is rising in Iran. This violent crackdown continues just as it has in past attempted revolutions. I mean, is it responsible to be sending citizens in Iran to their deaths? Do you bear some responsibility?
As I said, this is a war, and war has casualties. In fact, in order to preserve and protect and minimize the death toll, minimize innocent victims yet again be killed by this regime, action is needed. The regime is going to try and brutalize its citizenry as it has always done.
Now, he also told Haaretz that the key element is that none of these movements could have succeeded without some element of international support. And what he's referring to here is the involvement of the United States and Israel, of course. Now, Channel 14 News has reported something really fascinating here. They're reporting that foreign actors are arming the protesters in Iran with live firearms, which is the reason for the hundreds of regime personnel killed. Now, when you hear these numbers of casualties in Iran, there's no doubt that actual, genuine demonstrators are being targeted and killed. I don't know the exact numbers, and I'm not going to be a moron and just regurgitate what I've seen from Western media. I mean, literally, Laura Loomer today claimed that 20,000 people in Iran have been killed. Like, how does anyone take that insane woman, that lunatic, seriously? But it's very obvious that there is foreign involvement going on the ground. And it does make clear that the United States is all over this uprising in Iran. And they're urging for regime change. Again, let's go to Reza Pahlavi and his interview with CBS.
Reza, I heard you say this weekend that the US should, quote, cut the snake's head off for good and, quote, make sure this regime goes down for good. Are you pushing President Trump to initiate regime change?
Solidarity with the Iranian people is ultimately supporting them in their ask. And their ask is that this regime has to go, and we have to overcome the obstacles by putting an end to it. And ultimately, as a result of that liberation, be able to finally be unshackled and free to establish a democratic alternative and come back to the world of nations that can work together for a different future of regional stability and peace and good relationship with our neighbors, with the Israelis, with our Arab neighbors.
You hear him talk about the importance of democracy, which is laughable because he has already announced himself as the individual who would like to be inserted undemocratically as Iran's leader. Let's take a look at that.
Why would you be the right person to lead such a transition? And why should people trust you to return the country of 90 million people and bring them towards a democracy?
Well, it's interesting the way you characterize it, because if the people did not actually believe that I can be the person doing that for them or the person to be trusted, there wouldn't be the millions on the streets of Iran, in the four corners of Iran, chanting my name and asking my return. They do, and that should be indicative of the reality on the grounds. But why is it that I offer my service to Iran? I'm answering their call. I've stepped in to lead this transition, and I have a plan for that. I have a whole host of people who are helping us, lawyers, jurists, economic experts. So we're not just talking about a regime that needs to go. We're also talking about what's the alternative.
So he is working with experts. We could go ahead and speculate as to who those experts are. But going back to foreign interests arming some of the protesters, that explains the number of casualties in regard to Iran's security forces, because it's not just the protesters who are getting killed. Iran's security forces are also getting killed. And Channel 14 is, I guess, asserting that they're able to do this with the help of weapons that are provided by foreign interests. I've got a lot more to get to, Cenk, but what are your thoughts? By the way, Pahlavi has been living in the United States for 47 years. He has no ties to Iran. The idea that he would be a good transitional leader that would essentially be installed by the United States and Israel is ridiculous.
Okay, so I know some expats from Iran here, and some of them actually do support Pahlavi, and a lot of them are confused as to what to believe and what to do. They desperately want this regime to be gone so that Iran can be free. That makes sense. That's what we all want, right? So what they don't know is the facts we're about to give you guys about what the Israeli press has reported. That basically this guy is totally working for Israel. He has promised Israel, don't worry, the Iranians will be good boys and girls under my leadership. I'll be a perfect sock puppet for you guys, and I will neuter the Iranian people on behalf of Israel. So, but a lot of them don't know that. They're the victims of propaganda. In a lot of ways, the Jewish Americans are the victims of propaganda here as well. But oh my God, they're gonna kill all the Jews unless you support Israel. You gotta support Israel, remember, right? Etc. So what's the reality? Guys, a Shah is a Farsi word for king. It just means king, and king just means dictator. You can call it, anything you like, it doesn't matter. It's not a democracy. This guy is saying, the dictator Ayatollah in charge is terrible. I agree. Because that's why you should put me in as the dictator. By the way, they were going with that line for a long, long time. Oh, the Iranian people would love a new dictator. Wait a minute, he's the son of the former Shah who they hated so much, they did a revolution against. So now you're telling me, no. But they regret it and they would love to be serving loyally to this king instead. Nonsense. And then when I was on Piers Morgan debating this morning, Anna, and some lady who supports Pahlavi, obviously some sort of Israeli bot or troll or whatever, and she's like, oh, I speak for all of the Iranian people. Who voted for you? Nobody voted for her. Nobody voted for Pahlavi. There's never been a poll. And he says, they're chanting my name in the streets. That's because Mossad is literally in the streets and bragging about it, right?
Yep.
And so we're gonna show that to you too, but I just don't want you to get confused because there are plenty of confusing things. Like, it looks like maybe the Mossad guys, the writers, etc., are attacking the Iranian police in order to cause violence and have the Iranian police fight back against them. And that's what's leading to a much bigger body count. But honestly, guys, it's super hard to tell from the outside. The one thing we know for sure is that the Iranian people are not like, please give us a new dictator. That's all we want. And we want them controlled by Israel. Nonsense, all of it. That portion is 100% made up and almost exclusively what you're seeing in American media.
That Haaretz piece that I'm referencing in the story was written as Pahlavi was in Israel, visiting Israel. So he's very much a tool for the Israeli government. I mean, there's no question about that, it's obvious. And in regard to Mossad bragging about being on the ground, I mean, it's not just Mossad bragging about it on their own social media. You have Israeli papers like the Times of Israel. You even have the Miriam Adelson owned Israeli paper, Israel Hayom, talking about the Israeli influence on the ground, essentially manufacturing things and provoking what's going on. And I actually really feel terrible for the Iranian people because it's very reminiscent of what happened in Syria. You have an organic uprising, organic protests that immediately get co-opted by Israel, by the United States, by foreign interests that don't give a damn about the Iranian people whatsoever. And I'm sorry, I don't care what the expats think. Like, I get it, Cenk, they're your friends. Are they gonna go live in Iran? Are they living in Iran right now? No, they're not. So the only people who matter in this equation in terms of what they prefer are the people of Iran, period. It could be that they have some sort of democratic process. And of course, this is in the situation or scenario in which the regime has been overthrown, right? It could be that they have a democratic process in place and they vote Pahlavi in. God bless. Okay, great. But that's not what's happening here, and that's the issue.
Yeah, just real quick, because I really want to get to the Israeli press reports about him. There's different buckets, guys. There's the bucket of like, should we care about Iran at all? What the expats think, what the Iranian people think. Should we spend money and potentially American service members' lives to help in that cause? So that is a debatable issue, and what Anna is saying, and ultimately I would say is, I love the Iranian people, I hope they're free, but it's really not our business. And bombing them is not going to help them anyway, right? It's only going to be counterproductive. But there's one thing that is not debatable. That is that this Shah is a total puppet. And so what you're seeing all over American media, and Anna, it's not just Laura Loomer, I'm now seeing, because once Israel has a talking point, they spread it to all of their pundits and all of their politicians, which is hundreds of people in power in America, let alone the thousands of bots and trolls that they have. And they're all going, oh, it's 18 to 20,000 to 12,000, 20,000, right? They're making up these giant numbers, and they're saying the Iranian people are calling for a new dictator, they can't wait. That's just all garbage. That's all total Israeli propaganda. We're trying to discern for you what's real.
Pause. Anyone who has downplayed, minimized, or denied the mass slaughter that was carried out by, and continues to be carried out by the Israelis, now claiming that they're concerned about Iranian lives, can go ahead and kick rocks, okay? I mean, please look at yourselves in the mirror. And more importantly, understand that not everyone's a complete and utter idiot that believes you're telling the truth about anything. How are you gonna tell me you're worried about Iranian lives as tens of thousands of innocent likely hundreds of thousands of innocents in Gaza were slaughtered by the Israeli government, and they loved it. They couldn't get enough of it. Couldn't get enough of it. So please spare me your disgusting propaganda, especially the likes of that
is this?
Laura Loomer.
Is what we're seeing a truly organic movement, something that's just bubbling up from the Iranian people themselves? Or is there something else going on? Is it, as this analysis suggests, being co-opted, maybe even driven by a foreign-backed plan? That's really the core tension we're going to unpack here. So let's get right into it. The first big point the Young Turks makes has to do with Pahlavi's family name and, well, the pretty difficult legacy that comes with it. And trust me, you've got to understand this part to get the rest of their argument. A huge part of that legacy, it's a group called SAVAK. This was the Shah's secret police, and they were infamous. Their whole job was basically to crush any political opposition. We're talking torture, suppression, the whole deal. The Young Turks points out that SAVAK had almost unlimited power, and, get this, they cite the American Enterprise Institute to show it was funded and trained by the CIA. So, here's the kicker, according to this analysis. It's all about how Reza Pahlavi deals with this dark history. The source points to the New York Times, claiming that he either refuses to talk about it or just tries to downplay his father's really repressive legacy and everything SAVAK did. And that's a problem. Okay, next up, the analysis starts to question Pahlavi's actual support. Like, who really supports this guy? And more importantly, where are they? Are they inside Iran or somewhere else entirely? And this is where it gets really interesting, because you have this huge contrast. On one hand, Pahlavi himself claims there are millions on the streets of Iran chanting my name. Big claim, right? But then, the Young Turks brings in a report from the Israeli newspaper Haaretz, which tells a totally different story. It says his popularity is mostly with Iranians living outside the country, and that it's, quote, far from clear that Iranians who are actually in Iran want him as their leader. And on top of that, you've got Pahlavi's own words. He's quoted as saying, "I've stepped in to lead this transition, and I have a plan for that." Now, the way the source frames this is that it sounds pretty undemocratic, right? It's like he plans to be put in charge, not actually chosen by the people. All right, now the analysis pivots to what they see as a massive contradiction in Pahlavi's messaging. What's his actual plan? Is he all about a peaceful transition, or is he pushing for something way more aggressive? And I mean, look at this. It really lays out that contradiction perfectly. In one breath, Pahlavi is talking all about nonviolent civil resistance. But then, in another interview, he's telling the United States to cut the snake's head off for good. Two very, very different messages. But maybe the most damning piece of evidence, at least according to the source, is this quote right here. When someone asked him about the rising number of deaths in the protests he was encouraging, his response was, "This is a war, and war has casualties." Wow, I mean, that's a pretty stark way to look at it, isn't it? So all of this, the family history, the questionable support, the mixed messages, it all builds up to the central argument of this analysis. And that is the claim that this whole movement isn't just being supported from the outside, but that it's being actively manipulated by foreign powers. And they don't just say it, they lay out some really specific allegations. For starters, they claim the US and Israel are the ones pushing for regime change. Then there's the fact that Pahlavi himself apparently confirmed he's talking directly with the US administration. They also point to Israeli press reports about Mossad agents being on the ground, and even that foreign actors are giving live firearms to protesters. So, what's the end game here? Why would they do all this? Well, according to the source, the whole point is to stir up violence and basically hijack what might have been a totally genuine organic uprising. And they draw a direct line to what happened in Syria, saying it's the exact same playbook. And for their final point, the analysis really takes aim at the media, specifically how this whole story is being packaged and sold to us in the West. They point to this number as a perfect example. There was a claim going around in some media outlets that 20,000 people had been killed in the protests. The Young Turks argues that numbers like this are being totally inflated and pushed out there as part of some kind of coordinated talking point. And look, their conclusion is, well, it's blunt. They say it straight up. The story you're seeing in American media is, and I'm quoting them here, total Israeli propaganda. They believe it's all designed to get the public on board with an outcome that helps foreign powers, not necessarily the actual people of Iran.